Hello and welcome to the Schola Progenium. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the new rules that have been announced by Games Workshop on the Warhammer community website and a few of the character rules that have been leaked regarding Lemartes, Astorath and Mephiston and their profiles. And I'm going to be discussing a few things that stand out to me as significant changes that will be very useful to us as Blood Angels players. Now, I like to play pure Blood Angels. I don't like to soup them up, really. So, for me, it's just a massive relief, first things first, that we're getting the tactical doctrines. You know, finally, we can go toe-to-toe again against, normal Astartes opponents. And because so many people have Astartes armies, even people who've not been playing Astartes for a few years, have dusted off those old models, got them out of the attic or the basement, and they've been playing Astartes recently because those rules are just so good. And now we get to take part in all the fun. So I'm not going to go into loads of detail about that because I'm sure you've probably faced off against Astartes opponents or you've read about it elsewhere. There's plenty of videos breaking those down into loads of detail. But the tactical doctrines are just excellent. Being able to get additional AP-1 on weapons across the board as you go through the game is just so useful, and it's really going to time well with our own new unique bonuses as a Blood Angels chapter, which is the Savage Echoes. Now, Savage Echoes is a really, really cool rule, and what it essentially means is that we will, if whilst the Assault Doctrine is activated, so we have to be either in the third phase, or I'm presuming we'll have stratagems like the normal Space Marines that allow us to skip tactical doctrines if we so wish, but if we're in the Assault Doctrine, then we will get an additional extra attack on our characteristic of our models until the end of the turn, and that it specifically says is cumulative with the bonus these models receive from the Shock Assault ability. Now that is huge because because the Assault Doctrine is the last one on the list. It's the one you end up on, so we can run the whole game making use of this ability. So it's really useful. It's not that situational. It has got that slight restriction. We don't get it all the time, like our +1 to wound, but it's going to be there most of the time, and probably from turn 2 if we so wish. And it's almost good in a way to that, because turn 1 charge, we can get them off with our Smash Captains occasionally and this, that and the other, but a lot of the time, although sometimes turn 1 charge is great, a lot of the time it is good to temper our fury and our wrath as Blood Angels and to wait for that turn 2 charge. So being held off on our AP-1 might just hold off on our rage for a little bit and sort of ensure we make the right tactical decision. So I think that's quite an interesting twist on the rule there. Now it's going to be really, really nice when it ties in with that AP-1 on chainswords, because so many of our standard units will now be absolutely brutal in the combat phase. For example, if you had just 5 tactical marines, they can now take on Primaris toe-to-toe because they're going to get that extra attack that Primaris models have. Okay, so they won't have the same amount of wounds as the same unit, but man for man, they can put out the same attacks as those, more powerful troop units. Now, on the charge, 5 tactical marines, we get 15 attacks because they're going to get 1 each just for having a chainsword and bolter. They're going to get +1 for shock assault and +1 for their new Savage Echoes rule. They're also going to have another +1 if you've got a sergeant. So you're going to have 16 attacks in total. That's going to average, on a, maybe you're unlucky, maybe you're lucky, maybe 10 hits, hitting on 3-ups. If you say, and let's say you haven't got any rerolls or anything like that, against other Space Marines, and let's say you're going against Primaris, you get 5 wounds off. And with that additional AP-1, they're only going to have a 4-up save. So all in all, you're probably going to get 2 or 3 killed off on a charge, which is 2 or 3 wounds through, which is great. If you're taking on other tactical Marines or other units that aren't Astartes, then you'll be putting out lots of damage on them, because now we are going to be absolutely brutal in close combat. This takes us up to just next level. We're up there with Khorne Berserkers for the amount of attacks that our general infantry can put out in the close combat phase. For example, 5 tactical marines against, let's say, a unit of guardsmen or guardsman equivalent, they're probably going to put about 7 wounds through just on your average day, give or take. And, with that AP-1, that's probably going to be 6 dead. And, if your opponent gets unlucky and doesn't roll a 6 on their save, you're going to kill 7 guardsmen off. You're basically going to wipe a unit. If you do that against 3 or 4 units across a guard lines, they're only going to really be able to stop 2 from running away. And you're going to wipe a couple of units off just straight away with Battle Shock and force them to spend loads of command points to keep units in the game and surviving Battle Shock tests. So we're going to be just absolutely brutalizing enemy units, enemy infantry in the close combat phase. So toe to toe, we want to be getting in close. It's going to be just absolutely ridiculous. If you are the kind of guy who likes to take Primaris, you've got intercessors in your squad, and I'm certainly thinking about getting some myself now because I haven't really explored in the last couple of years of 8th edition. I haven't really explored Primaris units very much. But now they're really tempting because you'll get 20 attacks on the charge from a 5-man unit. That's absolutely insane. And I know I keep saying that, but it's just crazy. 20 attacks from a 5-man unit. 2 base, 1 for shock assault, 1 for savage echoes on the charge. That means you're going to be getting 13 hits against a marine equivalent. That's about 8 wounds. Against a guard equivalent, that's about 10 wounds. Remember, you'll have AP-1 on your close combat weapons. So you're going to be tearing through units, maybe 9 guardsmen dead or thereabouts. You probably kill 4 Space Marines on your average day. Or Space Marine equivalents, 3-up saves. So, and toughness 4. So it's just, again, really, really, really powerful for our basic units. It's really exciting that we've sort of been struggling under the cosh of pure Codex Astartes forces and armies for the past couple of months. But now, when we get into close combat, we're going to be able to get our revenge. It's very exciting. And of course, there's just endless combos with this. Excuse me. So you've got power weapons are now great. When you think of the fact that, strength 4 model, such as a Blood Angels Tactical Marine fighting against a Rhino equivalent, toughness 7, 3-up, save, tanks, like the Elder have those, Space Marines have those, pretty standard vehicle. Because you've got the +1 to wound, you're going to be wounding on 4s, you're putting out way more attacks. And with power weapons, they're not going to get that 6-up save. I just know from experience, when you're striking against tanks with infantry units, they just always get lucky on that 6-up save. But now they're not going to have that. You're just going to cleave straight through with power weapons. And against any 3-up army, you're just going to cleave straight through with power weapons. No saves, nothing to stop it. So that's going to be just excellent. And there's just endless combos, more than I could really list right now. And I'm sure we'll just come to discover loads and loads of great combos with this Savage Echoes +1 attack in close combat. We can now mob high value targets. This is going to be a big deal for us when we're taking on those really, really tough armies such as Custodes or Knights. Because now, in the past, it's not really been a valid tactic to mob your opponent's murder, death, killer units, because you won't do enough damage to them compared to the amount of damage they'll be able to do back to you in return. But now, because we've got the tactical doctrines and we've got that AP-1 on our standard close combat weapons, when a 2-up armor save becomes a 3-up, or when a 3-up save becomes a 4-up, all of a sudden it's just a very different game that you're playing. You are just so much more in with a chance of just defeating your opponent. So against those really hardcore units, having access to the tactical doctrines and getting that slight change to armor saves, bringing, the really powerful units up to their invuln save, from their armor save to their invuln save, just that slight bump, combined with the Savage Echoes +1 attack, combined with shock assault, which is just great as we know it, it's just going to mean that we've got the amount of attacks we need to put the amount of wounds that we need with that +1 to wound on those high value targets. And then because we've got that AP-1 now, those wounds are going to go through in abundance. This is going to be a game changer for us. The tactical doctrines plus Savage Echoes, it's just exciting stuff, very exciting stuff. We are going to be really doing some damage to those high value killer meta units, especially units that rely on decent invuln saves and that kind of thing. So that's Savage Echoes. That's the sort of our main big shift in our army. But there's also a few subtle things out there which are really, really cool and really, really useful. And a lot of those orientate around the characters. Now, before I go into the characters, I'm just going to mention one little thing, which is the rapid fire doctrine stratagem. Now, this is a stratagem that's been released by Games Workshop on the Warhammer community website. And it basically states that we can spend 2 command points for a Blood Angels Intercessor or Death Company Intercessor squad, which is very interesting. And that squad will have Rapid Fire 2 on its bolt rifles. And that means you're putting out 4 shots per guy. You're basically giving your Intercessors Storm Bolters. It's excellent, but with all the benefits of both, of their own normal weapons. So, at long range, these guys, if they haven't moved, with the Angels of Death ability, combined with this Rapid Fire 2 command points on a 10-man unit with bolters, is going to be terrifying. That's going to tear units apart. So that's really cool that we've got access to that. But that's not all, sports fans, because there's one more bonus that awaits us. We now have, with the Red Thirst, +1 to advance and +1 to charge rolls across the entire army. And that's not just if you're pure Blood Angels, that is the Red Thirst, so that means you'll be getting that even with just a simple Blood Angel detachment in a soup list. +1 to advance and charge. I don't need to tell you how big that is. That means when you're deep striking in with your units 9 inches away, you've got that much less to roll. The difference between rolling an 8 and rolling a 9 is that much less luck required. It's just great. Just absolutely great. I just can't even tell you how excited I am. Just when you're getting your Blood Angels captains up the field, having that +1 to advance roll is going to make a big difference sometimes. When you just need to get units just that little bit further into cover, when you've run across the battlefield, you've done a bit of combat and you think, I need to run these guys into cover after a combat's ended, maybe in the enemy's turn, and you're just 6 inches away, or you're just 7 inches away, and you think, I really hope I don't get a 1 on my advance, because then I won't make it into cover with my last guy. And then of course you get the 1 on the advance. Well, now that won't happen, so you can just get that much more mobility out of your units. You can spread around the battlefield. You're much more flexible. You're just adding this release. It just makes Blood Angels that much more Blood Angel. We've got more attacks than anyone else when we get into combat. Within reason. We've got more likelihood to get into combat because we can advance, because we can charge in and get +1 on our charges. We can deep strike in and we're more likely to strike from the skies and charge, and we're more likely to be successful. And it's just, absolutely amazing when we're trying to maneuver around the battlefield, which is another part of Blood Angels tactics. We can now advance +1 inch as well. Just if they just said +1 to charge across the whole army, I would have been absolutely ecstatic. But that +1 to advance is going to come in, so over the hundreds of games I'm about to play with my Blood Angels with these rules. That +1 to advance is going to come in so many times as well when I'm just trying to reposition my forces. So it's just going to be incredible. +1 to advance and +1 to charge and +1 to wound on the first round of combat if you're heroically intervene, blah blah. That part hasn't changed, but that is going to be great. Now, another thing, I'll move on to the characters now, because there's going to be some subtle changes to some of our favourite characters, and it really, but some of these changes are going to make a big difference on the battlefield. They're going to really benefit us. So the first thing first is the Biomantic Sarcophagus. Now, this again is a rule that's been released on the Warhammer community website, so you may well be aware of it. But essentially, it gives our Librarian Dreadnought an extra 6 inches to the range of his psychic powers. And that is just going to be so useful, especially when combining it with, in my opinion, Unleash Rage. That's going to be the big one for me. Giving that +1 attack to a unit of Death Company from that plus 6 inches is going to make that such a much more viable psychic power to get off all the way through the game. And if there's other units that are, let's say, outlying, fighting their own fight, fighting a little skirmish over an objective or something like that, and your librarian's not in the mix, he's not close enough to help them out, and he's in the main sort of fight going on elsewhere, he can reach out if he doesn't need to buff units nearby, and he can help those outlying units. So it really just helps you tip the balance wherever you need on the battlefield. And that level of flexibility, that difference of 6 inches, is going to be huge. It's going to make our ability to buff our units and give them just ridiculous levels of attacks just wherever we want on the battlefield. Because remember, Savage Echoes plus Unleash Rage is just going to it's going to get crazy. It's going to get really, really crazy. Excuse me, I've got a cold. So that's great. That's great on its own. But in addition, we get something else. In addition, once per turn, when a psychic test or deny the witch test is taken for this model, you can re-roll one of the dice. And that is just great. I don't really need to go into much detail on that. Being able to just have that that ability to re-roll one of the dice. If you get a 6 and a 1, if you get a 1 or a 2, you're going to re-roll that dice every time. And it's just going to give you a much stronger chance of protecting units like Terminators from smite and that kind of thing. So it's just really, really useful. So now I'll talk about the chaplains, and the first thing we need to look at is the fact that they only get their litanies off on a 3-up now. And for just a short while, we've had a really enjoyable advantage over our normal Astartes brethren, in that we've been able to just get our buff off, re-roll hits. Although we only got the one choice, we would always get it off within a 6-inch range. And that's great to have that reliability. And now we are downgraded to only being able to get it off on a 3-up, which isn't as good. But in return, we have got an access to a variety of litanies of hate. Now, the one that is on the Warhammer community website is quite interesting. It says we get an individual one, Blood Angel's Invocation of Destruction. Recalling from legend the deeds of Ascalon, the chaplain inspires his battle brothers to still their souls, compelling their blades to strike true and deep. If this litany is inspiring, select one Blood Angel's unit within 6 inches of this model. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model in that unit, on an unmodified wound roll of 6, that weapon has an armor penetration characteristic of -4 for that attack. Now that's really cool. You know, that -4 is going to be really, really useful most of the time. And because of the just huge amount of attacks that Blood Angels are going to put out in close combat, that 6 is going to come up quite a lot. So it's actually, you know, that's all right. It's pretty good. It's not amazing, but it's pretty good. I would probably personally go with re-rolls over that every time, but it's there. Depending on the situation, it could be useful. Against the tougher units that you're going to be facing, you know, the murder death squads that have crazy invent saves, you're not going to be picking this. And against just mass infantry, you're not going to be picking this. So you're really only going to be using it against units that are really good and have a really good armor save, but don't have an invent save. And that isn't that, you know, frequent. So I can't see myself picking this over re-rolls to hit very often, but in the situations where it's going to be useful, obviously I'm going to use it, and it's nice to have that option. Now, the plot thickens somewhat when I switch over and look at the rules that have been released, that have been leaked, and I think these were leaked on Reddit. Now, it seems to show that we have litanies from page 58 of the book, which means that we're probably going to get our own individual litanies compared to just the normal Space Marine Codex, which is interesting. And it's also very reassuring, because I have been quite concerned, but just sort of pushing it to the back of my mind. I haven't really, you know, voiced it very much, but it's been a sort of a slight niggle in the back of my subconscious that, you know, what if the Blood Angels don't get a new codex? What if the Blood Angels don't actually get their own new codex? They just get a release in sync with the Blood Angels. They get, you know, they get Templars, so to speak. They don't even get, you know, a proper, you know, their own codex anymore. That would be really, really, really bad. I would not be happy if that was the case. But it seems like that's probably not going to come about now. It seems like Games Workshop, recognise that the Emperor's favourite son was sanguineous, and thus we definitely deserve our own codex. And that's sort of reinforced by two things. First, it's from page 58 in the book, sort of statement on the character profiles of Astorath, Mephiston and Lemartes, but when it's not Mephiston, sorry, just Astorath and Lemartes, when it's referencing the litanies they have access to. But also on Mephiston's profile, it refers to him having to use psychic powers from the Blood Angels Codex, and that means that if we didn't get our Blood Angels Codex renewed, we wouldn't have access to any psychic powers, because we wouldn't be able to use the Space Marine Codex for their psychic powers. So it's reassuring in that it says here, this model can attempt to manifest 2 psychic powers in your psychic phase and attempt to deny 2 psychic powers in your opponent's psychic phase. It knows Smite and 3 psychic powers from the sanguinary discipline, see Codex Blood Angels. So seeing that printed there in italics on that character profile, see Codex Blood Angels, reassures me that that niggle can go away now. There's no concern in my mind that the Blood Angels will not continue to have their own chapter-specific codex, as we deserve. So that's good. That's a minor thing, but something I really wanted to highlight, really wanted to point that out. Now, we'll go back to Lemartes. We'll just sort of go Chaplain, then Lemartes. So Chaplain's, pretty useful. But Lemartes now is going to be that much more useful. Now, I'm saying it now, I prefer Lemartes now. Whatever his points value, I prefer Lemartes. And I have for ages said that Lemartes is not really my preference. I'd rather just have a standard Chaplain, because I've always said that I don't like the fact that Lemartes can only have his litanies of hate affect Death Company units. And I feel like Death Company, as I've said many times before, and if you've watched my videos before in the past, you'll know that I've said this, that although I recognise the fact that the reroll charges for Death Company is great and all, the fact that Lemartes can't buff non-Death Company units is a real deal breaker for me, because in the late phase of the game I want to be able to put my Chaplain where I need those buffs. However, that has changed, because on Lemartes' character profile now it says that at the start of the battle round, first of all, it says this model knows the litanies of hate, see below, which is the Blood Angels litany, and 2 other litanies from the litanies of battle, page 58, mysterious. At the start of the battle round, this model can recite any one litany it knows that has not already been recited. So he knows 2, which is great. That's really useful, makes him more flexible over a normal Chaplain. He can only cast 1, but that's fine. Knowing 2 means you can use him how you need him when you need him. However, what it says is under the litanies of hate, if this litany is inspiring, you can reroll hits, attack rolls, blah, 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 and it's friendly Blood Angels units within 6 inches of this model. So Lemartes is now not only affecting Death Company. It doesn't say anywhere in his profile that he only affects Death Company. It says Guardian of the Lost still. He still has that ability on his profile. I know I'm jumping around a bit, but it says friendly Death Company units can use this model's leadership instead of their own whilst they are within 6 inches of this model. So he's still helping the Death Company. He's still got Fury Unbound. When a charge roll is made for a friendly Death Company unit within 6 inches of this model, you can re-roll the dice. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model in friendly Death Company units within 6 inches of the model, you can re-roll the hit roll. So he only gives automatic re-rolls to Death Company. He's still got only that ability, but he's not having to roll to cast that on the 3-up. So he's just as good as a Chaplain always was, but only for Death Company. So he's not lost any of his old preference for Death Company. But now, as he is a priest, he can also cast an additional litany of hate on another Blood Angels unit. And he knows 2, which means that he can effectively know 3 different litanies and always cast rerolls on the Death Company as accompanying, always get another one off, maybe on that Death Company unit, double buffing them, or on another Blood Angels unit nearby, making him very, very flexible, or very capable of making a Death Company unit absolutely murderous. You're giving your Death Company the extra attack from Savage Echoes now, on top of they've still got their Death Company extra attack on the charge from the Black Rage. They've still got their red, they've got everything now. They've got all the attacks. Let's see, 2 for a basic Death Company, +1 for Black Rage, +1 for Shock Assault, +1 for Savage Echoes, makes 5 attacks. Base, I feel like I'm even missing some there, but getting rerolls, having more litanies you can cast on them, I'm basically, the point of the matter is I'm losing track of the amount of buffs you can put on a Death Company unit with Lemartes in place. He is going to be incredible, and I'll read that for you one more time. Abilities, Angels of Death, page 34. Fury Unbound, when a charge roll is made for a friendly Death Company unit within 6 inches of this model, you can reroll the dice. He's still got rerolls for Death Company. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model in a friendly Death Company unit within 6 inches of this model, you can reroll the hit roll. So he gets an automatic litany off. He's possibly the only Astartes model, the only one that comes to mind. Now that Blood Angels Chaplains will be stuck with getting a 3-up for their litanies, he's the only one who can really get an automatic litany off every single turn for free, as long as there's Death Company nearby. This guy is great. He's absolutely excellent. He's also got his Rosarius, of course, 4-up invulnerable save. He's got Jump Pack Assault, of course, he can Deep Strike. And of course, he's Guardian of the Lost, as I mentioned, so Death Company can use his leadership. It's just great. Lemartes has lost all of his restrictions. His original restrictions have only become benefits, and he's got additional buffs on top. Lemartes is an auto-include from this point henceforth. Now, we'll take a look at Astorath. Now, Astorath is looking like a bit of a bad boy. He is looking like a beast here. So, as you can imagine, great in close combat. I don't know Astorath's rule off the top of my head, but this looks basically to what he had already. 12-inch move, 2-up weapon skill, 2-up ballistic skill, strength 4, toughness 4, 5 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 9, 2-up save. Now, 2-up save's great. He's good in combat. He's got his execution as axe. That puts him up to strength 6 because it's +2 strength. It's AP -3, so it's got extra strength and the -AP of a power sword, and it's D3 damage. And if he gets a 6 to wound, he gets an automatic flat 3. So his weapon basically becomes a +2, a mini power hammer, only gives him +2 strength instead of double strength. But in every other regard, on a 6, this thing's a power hammer. Thunder hammer, sorry, power hammer, what am I on about? Now, he's also got Redeemer of the Lost. Friendly Blood Angels units can use this model's leadership instead of their own while they were in 6 inches of this model. In addition, for Death Company, they just don't roll. They automatically pass, so they're not taking anything from Battle Shock. He's got Jump Pack Assault, of course, he's Deep Striking. He's got Rosarius, of course, he's got his 4-up invuln. He's also got the Mass of Doom, which is something he's always had, and something which has never massively convinced me, because it's only once per battle and you have to roll on it, and it's not necessarily great. You can just do a unit of mortal wound and that's it. His buff's totally wasted for the game. But once per battle at the start of your movement phase, you can chant the Mass of Doom, roll 1d6 for each Blood Angels infantry unit within 6 inches of this model, and apply the result below. On a 1, that unit suffers a mortal wound, so every unit will take a mortal wound, which isn't that bad. It's not terrible. It's not the worst thing in the world, but, this thing's supposed to be a buff. This guy's supposed to be a mega character. I don't see why we get that disadvantage, but there it is. On a 2 to 5, more than likely you'll get this. Dark Wrath is basically +1 in close combat to hit, which is great. Basically, all of our units are hitting on 2s, probably wounding on 2s against most infantry with thunder hammers, that kind of thing. Got all the rerolls. You've got banners in there. You've got captains in there, chaplains in there. You're going to be getting all kinds of rerolls, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s most of the time. That's great. And on a 6, you get that plus all the models within 6 inches, or all models that are in a unit that are within 6 inches of him. So, not just models within 6 inches, which is great. That's a really good buff. Have a 4-up invulnerable save. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model in that unit, add 1 to the hit roll. So they've got the +1, and they've also got the 4-up invuln save. So, on a 6, he's absolutely great. Everyone within 6 inches, your entire battle line suddenly has a 4-up invuln. But, sometimes you're going to have storm shields in there anyway. But it's really good when he's buffing your general units, and giving Death Company a 4-up invuln is great. But it's not any real change. This is just Astorath as is. The big change comes in here, and that is that he knows 3 litanies from the litanies of the battle. And at the start of the battle round, this model can recite 2 litanies it knows that have not already been recited by a friendly model. So if you have Astorath and Lemartes on the board next to each other, you are essentially going to get off potentially 4 buffs from those 2 models on a Death Company unit and any other units that are around that. But if you're spamming Death Company now, if you take big old blobs of Death Company, 15-man units, and you take just 1 will be enough. But if you went went absolutely all out on this, and you just went 3 units of 15 Death Company, you're going to drop Lemartes in there, you're going to drop Astorath in there, you're going to drop your Death Company in there. You've got reroll charges on all those units. So, you're probably going to get in with a couple of them, more than likely. You can also spend 2 command points to get 3d6 on one of those units. So, you're going to get a couple of units in. Lemartes is going to give both of those units rerolls straight away, free. No one else, no other chaplain does that, but Lemartes, bang, there you go. Rerolls for your Death Company, who, by the way, have +1 attack from Savage Echoes, on top of all the +1 attacks that Death Company get. Their Black Rage, Shock Assault, the fact that they have 2 base, just great. So they're going to be absolutely pouring attacks. Oh, and you just get to reroll all of those. But then Lemartes can cast 1 buff. Astorath can cast 2 more buffs. Yeah, they're only on a 3-up, so maybe you fail one of those. Maybe you command point one of those and you just get all of them off. You can have 4 buffs on your just wall of murder. It's going to be just absolutely cruel. It's going to be cruel. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait. I'm so excited for this. So, when you're looking at that there, that is some crazy combos just from a couple of leaks. I'm really excited to be back in the game with my Blood Angels. Not that I've put them down, I just mean, my Blood Angels, I feel like, and I'm sure you will all agree out there, it's been a bit of an uphill battle for us purist Blood Angels players, and, just our really key valuable units have kept us in the game for all this time. We've been fighting the good fight, but now it's our time to shine, and it's our time to bring the pain back. It's our time to get revenge on the enemies of the Imperium. It's our time to, with savage echoes in our minds, tear apart our foes as we remember all the wrongs that have been done to us over the past few months, as our codex hasn't been that strong. So, there it is, guys. That's sort of my first takeaway from this. I'm sure there'll be more to think about, more to discuss. Please do take the time, if you've got it, to comment below and add to the discussion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the situation. I'm sure other people would love to read them too. But for me, I just want you to take away, I'm very excited about all this, very excited for our character combos. I can't wait to see the level of destruction that Savage Echoes allows us to wreak on our opponents. And, all in all, I feel like this is exactly what we needed to bring us right up there with the skills that we have, with our tactical play, with our flexibility, with our toughness. We're now as manoeuvrable as any army, we're as tough as any army, and now we're as just murderously brutal as any army when it comes to close combat. So, guys, good luck out there. I can't wait to hear what you're thinking. I can't wait for this release. I can't wait for, a couple of days from now when I can pre-order my Mephiston, get that guy painted up. I haven't really talked about Mephiston that much, but basically he's the same, but with +1 attack and +1 wound, which is going to be great for Mephiston as it is. And obviously he's got all his psychic powers, and we've still got access to the Blood Angel psychic powers, which is great. So, all in all, generally absolutely great news. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found it entertaining. This has been the Schola Progenium. Goodbye.